now. Well, what a treat as we get into the holidays. Gunnery Sergeant Jessie Jane Duff retired from the United States Marine Corps after serving 20 years on active duty. That's a long time. Jessie is now a senior fellow with the London Center for Policy Research. Jessie Jane Duff, Merry Christmas. Great to have you with us.
Oh, good morning. Merry Christmas. It's exciting to be here.
I know. It's been quite the year. You've been on many times in the middle of this VA scandal. Now we understand that information has surfaced that Eric Shinseki, right, where you all remember him, the former VA chief that got fired by Obama, was briefed about manipulation of appointment wait times long before the Phoenix scandal ever happened that caused, allegedly, the death of many veterans. Well, what's the deal now?
Well, you know, what's so interesting to me is that we had reported this multiple times. It had been on the airwaves that the Obama administration had been briefed by the transition team from the Bush administration not to believe that the wait times that they were giving the VA, meaning they had to show that they only made patients wait 14 days maximum by VA regulation to get an appointment, and that what was happening throughout the nation was that they were basically cooking the books. They were hiding the wait list. They were actually lying in their numbers. People were actually waiting, in some cases, up to 4 months for an appointment. But what they were reporting back was 14-day wait times. So during the transition time from the Bush team to the Obama team, they were warned, look, don't believe what these hospitals are telling you. We've detected that there's problems in these numbers. So there was an awareness that there was a problem. Now, that I knew for a fact over the last 2 years. Well, it's recently come out and been reported that high-level knowledge before the VA scandal broke in Phoenix was actually happening, that Eric Shinseki himself had actually been informed about these delays and wait times. Now, he turned around and testified and stated he was not aware that this was systemic. So I don't want to sit here and say he lacks integrity, but for him to sit there and testify in front of Congress that he was not aware, of this being systemic, I find very suspicious because it has been reported on multiple occasions. So now we're getting these reports out that these high-level officials have been briefed on it, and now I'm very, very suspicious as to how deep this ran, how long they allowed it to go on, and how long they kept trying to cover it up. Because what's happened now is that the American people, and veterans in particular, have no confidence, no faith in the VA system in any way, shape, or form, because now you're going to try to sell us a bill of goods that you're going to reform this, you're going to fix it. Do you know how many years this is going to take before veterans really believe that that has happened?
It's hard to say. I don't think they ever will, to be honest with you. Gunnery Sergeant Duff, let's get to this Shinseki situation. I mean, this is a guy that served in the military for a long time. This isn't somebody that came from...
He's a highly decorated man himself. He served in Vietnam. He himself doesn't have... He has part of his foot removed from what has happened. I believe it was some type of explosion that happened. I don't know if it was a grenade or what had occurred in Vietnam, but he himself is a disabled American veteran. He was briefed by Susan Bowers. Susan Bowers, she basically gave a sworn statement. She was an executive in charge of dozens of hospitals and the clinics from the West Texas to Arizona. And what she did was she said that she had briefed Eric Shinseki in 2009. She warned her superiors in Washington that if any VA medical facility was going to implode, it was going to be Phoenix. She retired 1 month ahead of the schedule in May when the scandal emerged. And she said that before Hellman became the head of the Phoenix facility in 2012, Sharon Hellman, who was the poster child for all of this debacle,
right.
She was the director at Phoenix. She said an audit showed the hospital was out of compliance with the directives that required the patients to be placed on an official electronic waiting list. That's the list I just described that says 14 days. But in fact, there was no active list for the primary care patients in Phoenix, that they were hiding these lists. And it was a previous hospital director that certified they were out of compliance. So she submitted the report that Phoenix Hospital was out of compliance, and she was under pressure by another official to say it was compliant. So right there's a problem. They're starting this cover-up. She said at the beginning of 2009, she briefed Eric Shinseki when the Department of Veterans Affairs, he was secretary, and other officials, and she briefed them several times a year about the patient backlog and other problems in Phoenix. She said the projects she pushed, like improving the scheduling and the clinic space so more patients could be seen, were defunded or delayed because she was told there was no money or no legal mechanism to lease space. So essentially, these officials knew that there was a debacle, there was corruption, there were problems going on, and they just kept pushing it under the carpet, pushing it under the carpet. Meanwhile, people like Sharon Hellman got a bonus for her performance multiple times. All the executives throughout the nation were getting bonuses because they were appearing to be compliant, but they were not. You know what the $1 million outcome of this is? Sharon Hellman ended up it came out just over the past week or so. She wasn't even fired for the debacle in Phoenix. You know what she ended up being fired for? It was kind of like an Al Capone thing. They had to fire her for something that wasn't related to what she really did. They fired her for receiving gifts. She received thousands upon thousands of dollars in gifts, and that's what they got her on. They said they could not prove that she actually knew about the wait times, and she was unaware of it. And I sat back and I thought, are you kidding me? So they finally got rid of her, but they didn't even get rid of her for what we made allegations of, that she was using inappropriate wait times, that she was aware that her patients were dying, that she was aware of all of this mismanagement. Instead, she got fired for accepting a wide range of gifts. I believe it was several $100,000 worth of gifts, including trips to Disneyland, Beyonce tickets, a wide range of different things because of some contractor wanting to get a contract with them. I was appalled.
This is really unbelievable. I mean, it's like every time you peel a layer back, Gunnery Sergeant Duff, this gets worse and worse, and it's just off the media radar screen right now. I'll tell you the other thing. You know, when McDonald came in as the new director, everybody thought, you know, this guy ran Procter & Gamble. He's a change agent. I mean, he's made a few moves, but he's not done anything. And every time you try to pin him down, I get the same answer, which is, well, you know, we have to go slow. We don't want to get sued. We want to get lawsuits. But at the end of the day, nothing is changing there, and people are starting to get very frustrated.
Yeah, you know, they have actually finally, at least thank God, they have fired Sharon Hellman. It took over 6 months of her on the payroll at $170,000, I believe was what her pay was, as I recall. And so for 6 months, she was still living on taxpayers' dollars. And, Secretary McDonald's kind of, I'm going to give him one element of grace. He's in a rock and a hard place. He's dealing with a government agency, and whenever you're dealing with a government agency, the debacle and the layers of muck that they have to go through to fire employees, yes, is noticeably very difficult. Congress passed a law that would allow them to be fired in 5 days. The lawyers are fighting it, saying that this goes against all of the other standards within all federal regulations, that they have to have opportunity to appeal. And the VA's claim is if you're firing them without ensuring that you have a rock-solid case, these employees are going to be able to go back and appeal their firings, and then it's going to cost the taxpayers more because you're going to have to pay them the back pay and potential lawsuits. My attitude is this. If you have unequivocal evidence that they have mismanaged what happened on their watch, knowingly or unknowingly, people are asked to resign all the time. They have or forced to resign all of the time in private practice, and they have no grounds for reprisal. How is it the federal government has allowed it that I have to prove that you were a jerk? In every shape, way, or manner, when I see the evidence that everything you did was wrong.
I know.
So she did not know. Just not knowing what happened on your watch is what veterans get relieved from command all the time.
Yeah.
A general will lose his or her command all the time.
Right.
If captains and majors are running amok, whether the general knows it or not, because what that says is you do not know your men and women, you do not know your employees, you do not know the standard that is being upheld. And if Sharon Hellman was unaware, she should be fired for ignorance because she should know what's going on her watch. But I will say I'm very thrilled she was fired for accepting inappropriate gifts. That shows me right there she was a corrupt individual. She got $11,000 for a trip to Disneyland for a family member of her 6-member family for an 8-night stay. She He got $729, 5 tickets last year and parking to a Beyonce concert. I mean, my God, this woman was a corrupt individual. And, they did fire her. Thank goodness. They did get her on something that was rock solid because maybe they just couldn't sit there and keep waiting to find irrevocable evidence of what she knew at Phoenix. Good riddance. Secretary McDonald, I've actually met him. I saw him speak at the National Press Club. I will say, he is going to do everything he can to reform the VA. Is it going to be successful? It's not happening fast enough for anybody who is watching. Of course it's not, because we've had years of deaths. I will say that there have probably been thousands upon thousands of veterans' deaths due to VA mismanagement, and we'll never be able to prove it because millions of records were already deleted by the VA. They had deleted appointment backlogs. They had deleted cases that were not seen in under 90 days. There was a loosely written rule that allowed them to delete records, so we don't even know if those vets ever got seen or not. They had a backlog in 2011 that was so egregious that 55 veterans died a day just waiting to get their benefits. We'll never know how many of those deaths were associated with not getting the benefits. And then, of course, we've seen these wait times in Albuquerque that were up to 4 months for gangrene, brain tumors, heart disease. We could go on and on with all the wait times. How many of those veterans ended up dying just waiting? Mm-hmm. You can't nail them down. It's like nailing Jello to a wall to prove that a death was a result of the VA lack of care. But we all know when it walks like a duck, looks like a duck, acts like a duck, it's a flippin' duck. And when people are dying left and right, we can definitely say the VA contributed to those deaths.
I got a couple more minutes, Gunnery Sergeant Duff. Military benefits are at risk for 2 years now straight. Pay increases at 1%, which is about 0.8% below the national cost of living average. We're spending a lot of money in the United States on a lot of garbage. Why not at least keep military benefits on pace with inflation?
Oh, this is obscene. This will be the second year in a row that Congress has approved a 1% increase, and this is the administration's solution to some of our economic woes. We're approaching an $18 trillion debt, and they're going to try to balance this budget on the 1% that serves this nation. I find it appalling. I get it that defense is expensive. I understand. Anybody who's a conservative knows we got to make cuts every single way possible. But what's happening, unfortunately, is that they're making cuts on the backs of the military families that have volunteered to serve this nation. I get people on the left that saying, well, you didn't volunteer, you're getting paid. No, nobody was drafted. Let's read between this line here. We can have a draft where people cannot have any say, or we can have people have the opportunity to serve this nation and get the best and the brightest. Between the VA treating the veterans terribly and the military giving pink slips to many of our majors and captains out on the battlefields, in the Army that was hit very hard, and the Navy because they're making such dramatic cuts to our forces, that if the administration were to get its way, it will take it back to pre-World War II levels. And meanwhile, you can't fight on two fronts. So we've got a 1% increase that the administration wants to have held on to 2017. And along with that, they're having to pay more out of pocket in their housing. So you get a housing allowance that is based upon the cost of living for the region you're in. Keep in mind, people, you have pay and you have benefits. Mm-hmm. The benefits include your housing allowance, your food allowances, all of these cost of living allowances. So now, let's say the cost of living in Washington, D.C., hypothetically, was $1,500 to get a one-bedroom apartment. They now give them $1,200, so $300 has to come out of pocket. So if all of these cuts start happening, what essentially will happen in 5 years, a sergeant is going to end up losing over $5,000 annually out of their own paycheck. Mm-hmm. Anybody who has served on active duty knows, I know for myself, I was living pretty much payday to payday for a very long period of time till I probably hit E6. Then there wasn't still much left over, which is a staff sergeant. You're living a very tight and frugal budget. You're not high on the hog. And we don't want our military living in impoverished conditions, so that because when you start having to take money out to pay for the housing, you're having to take money out to pay for your medical costs because they're going to increase some of the costs that will come out of their copay for medication. When you start having to pay all that, what starts suffering? Your family, your quality of life. And there isn't a high quality of life. There's just a average quality of life. And everyone understands if you want people to re-enlist, make this an opportunity that people want to re-enlist for. So the pay increase has been paralyzed at 1%, and they have had an increase out of cost for their housing, and they're also looking at an increase in their medical costs. So what's going to end up happening, ultimately, military families are paying out of the nose to keep their heads above water. And we've had a dramatic increase of military families that are on WIC and food stamps. And that's essentially a result of having to have all these other costs. Many costs have not gone down. So ultimately, they're having to pay out of their own checks, and they now need public assistance to get many of their costs paid for with food.
Unbelievable. I mean, at the end of the day, you look at the billions of dollars that we waste on all kinds of nonsense every single day, and it's mind-boggling that our veterans should be suffering in this way, and our enlisted personnel. Jessie Jane Duff, we're out of time. Gunnery Sergeant Duff, thanks for being with us. Gunnery Sergeant, people want to follow you on Twitter. What's your handle?
Oh, my handle's Jessie Jane Duff. Very simple. JessieJaneDuff, as in Frank. And I'm happy to follow. I have a great Patriots and veteran following, and I do engage as often as possible.
Fabulous to have you with us. We hope you had a Merry Christmas, Gunnery Sergeant Duff. And you have a very happy new year, and we look forward to having you back in 2015.
I wish many blessings upon your listeners for the new year.